Alright, so for those of you who are on a firmware prior to November for the S17 or prior to the December firmware for the T17, what you can do to install the firmware is to download and run our unlocking tool. When it opens up, the settings are a little confusing at first, but you'll notice the IP address of the miner is 192.168.0.68. This tool's used to unlock, hundreds of machines at a time. To make it simple, we'll just have it unlock all miners from the IP address of 192.168.0.65 up to 70. Ours is 68. You can just leave this stuff as the default or change it to your username and password for the web panel if you changed it. And then just press unlock all miners. Command prompt will open. And just let it cycle through. It might give you a weird error right here, but if it says success, it did work. Alright, so now you will notice the miner is offline. So we're just going to wait for it to power back on. What you're going to want to do next after the machine powers back on is, well, first and foremost, if you didn't touch these settings or close the program, good. If you change these settings, just put them back in exactly how you had them. Then you're going to want to come over here and press remove signature. And it's going to cycle through. We'll see it saw the miner. It replaced the file. So from that step, we can now go over to here, go to upgrade. Now when you go to upgrade, just click choose file, open up the firmware file for the miner of your type. So if you're an S17, put the S17 firmware and T17 for the T17 firmware that you got off our website. Do periodically check if you have the latest version, as there will be updates being pushed out. I'm just going to press flash firmware. If you see any errors pop up, such as the firmware signature doesn't check, ignore that, it still will work. So we'll just hang here for a moment. It will take a moment and the machine will go offline. Here is an example of when it has an error. Just ignore this. The miner firmware did install. Now after this step, you can skip ahead. This next part is going to be if you are on a firmware that is on one of the newer miners. To create the micro SD card flash image, the first step you're going to have to do is to format the SD card. You want to have it set for FAT32, 32 kilobytes. Hit start. Okay. That's that. After you format it, you're going to want to download the SD card image off the website from Asic.to. You're going to open up all the folders, or zip files. Then you're going to want to open up the following folder, take all of these files, and then just drag and drop onto the flash drive. SD card. And then from there, you can plug it into your Antminer with it powered off, plug in the 2 wires into the power supply. It's going to power on, and you're just going to wait for the red and green light to flash at the exact same time, on and off, on and off. Then you can turn off the power, remove the SD card, and power back on, and you're all done. Now, after loading the firmware from the micro SD card, the IP address might have changed, as it has in so what you're going to want to do, just scan and try to find what the new IP address is. Yeah, so it did change. And now the password for this firmware is root and root. Now you're going to see MP test firmware, Antminer S17. This is okay. This is what you're looking at. Then from there, you're going to want to go over to upgrade, choose file, pick the firmware from off that you downloaded off our website, press flash image, press OK, and give it a few moments. You might have to check again for the IP address changing, but from that step forward, we can begin configuring the settings. Now, after the miner installs the firmware, you might have to take a check to see if the IP address changed. Luckily, in this example, the IP address did not change. And you'll see right here, we are at the web panel. And then from here, we can start configuring the settings. Now, as we can see, the firmware is now running. The first step you're going to want to do is go over to miner configuration and just set up your pool information. What you should do next after you have your pool set in is you're going to want to go over to chain frequency settings and put in a setting that's suitable for you. You might have to do some tinkering at this time, but setting I suggest for the S17 would be about 700 megahertz. We could throw 19.5 volts, and you're going to press save. And you're going to have to wait a few moments. It could be anywhere from 4 to 5 minutes to have the machine up and running. And then from going forward, just tinker with those settings. Try to find what works best for you. I tell everyone with the S17s, aim from anywhere from 65 to 75 terahashes a second. Do check for updates. We are going to have the auto-tune update going live very shortly, and it will make your life a lot easier.